They destroyed my great-grandfather's dam on the day I gave my daughter away. I remember the way the morning light fell across the old limestone wall, soft and golden, the kind of light that makes you think the world might still be gentle if given the chance. I had polished my boots twice, straightened the insignia on my old Army Corps uniform, and taken one last look at the water gliding over the spillway, a steady, comforting ribbon that had shaped my life as surely as it had shaped the land. But when I came home that evening from Emma's wedding reception, still carrying the warmth of her smile in my chest, I turned down the gravel road toward our property and felt the world tilt off its axis. The dam, Lockwood Dam, the one my great-grandfather built with bare hands and quiet brilliance, was gone. Not cracked, not damaged, gone. In its place was a wound of broken stone and gouged earth, muddy water tearing through the valley like something unchained, ripping out soil and snarling through the channel that had once flowed with controlled grace. Diesel fumes hung thick in the air, clinging to my uniform like the scent of betrayal. And there, on her immaculate back deck, stood Miranda Caldwell, president of the Brookside Haven Community Association, wineglass in one hand, satisfaction in the other, watching the destruction of a legacy older than the very subdivision she reigned over. My name is Elias Lockwood, third-generation steward of 15 acres just outside Briarwood, Missouri, keeper of a piece of land my grandfather Walter Lockwood carved out of wild creek beds and stubborn stone during the late 1930s. He built the dam with hand-cut limestone blocks. No mortar, no shortcuts, nothing but precision, geometry, and a kind of patience the modern world has forgotten. Every spring, the water slid over those stones in a gentle silver sheet, humming low like a hymn only the land understood. It was the sound of my childhood, my refuge after 3 tours overseas, the place where Emma learned to fish and where my father taught me the language of rivers. But then came Brookside Haven, a development of manicured lawns and matching mailboxes, built by people who wanted the illusion of rustic charm without accepting the presence of anything truly old. Our creek became their natural amenity, and our dam, the structure that protected their homes from spring floods long before their foundations were poured, became, in their eyes, an eyesore, a liability, a threat to safety. Most neighbors were good folks, confused more than cruel, but every kingdom finds its monarch, and ours found Miranda Caldwell, a woman with a planner full of color-coded rules, a smile that never touched her eyes, and a belief that leadership meant domination wrapped in the language of professionalism. The first time she visited my porch, she gave the house a quick scan, the way a developer evaluates land, seeking flaws, estimating profit. She opened with, "Mr. Lockwood, we need to discuss how your property integrates with Brookside Haven standards." I told her my property existed before her development had a name, but she waved that aside like dust on her polished boots. "Precisely the issue," she replied. "Your historic structure's present liability exposure," she said, meaning, your dam doesn't match our aesthetic. Then came the coded phrase I've heard more times than I'd like. "Your lifestyle poses challenges for long-term investment protection." I offered inspections, maintenance logs, even quarterly reviews, anything that would keep the peace. But Miranda had already decided I was the problem she was born to eliminate. Her first blow came disguised as concern. Child Services arrived after an anonymous report claiming my land was unsafe for visiting grandchildren. They left puzzled, apologetic, and maybe a little angry at being used. 3 weeks later, a certified letter arrived, $12,000 in retroactive infrastructure impact fees, backed by a report from an expert named Trent Albright, who turned out to be licensed in Texas, not Missouri, practicing without authorization, a fake authority used to prop up fake fees. I didn't yell. I documented. I showed up at the next community meeting, requested a full financial breakdown, and asked, calmly, clearly, why the association was relying on an out-of-state hydrologist with no Missouri credentials. The room shifted. Residents like Harold Simmons, who had lived there long before Brookside Haven grew its second cul-de-sac, started asking questions. Marjorie Bell, a widow on a fixed income, clutched her latest special assessment like a summons from fate. Miranda saw something she feared that night, the first sign of a community noticing her cracks. So she escalated. Legal letters arrived daily. Inspectors showed up at dawn with anonymous complaints. The local paper received a dramatic letter about aging rural structures threatening modern developments. Online rumors bloomed about unstable veterans and unregulated dams. I'd seen psychological operations overseas that were less coordinated. I hired Lauren Miyamoto, an environmental lawyer with a spine forged in courtroom flame. Together, we dug into bylaws, financial disclosures, county ordinances. And beneath the surface, everything rotted. Meetings held illegally. Assessments imposed without votes. Authority claimed over lands the association never had jurisdiction over. The whole operation held together with confidence and intimidation rather than law. But nothing prepared me for the orange notice bolted to my gate. 48-hour emergency abatement order, declaring Lockwood Dam an imminent collapse risk, set for demolition during the exact weekend of Emma's wedding. That morning dawned impossibly perfect. Sunlight soft, autumn cool, Emma radiant in white. I pinned my medals, straightened my collar, and rehearsed the words a father is supposed to say when letting go of his daughter's hand. Then the engine started. If you've ever heard heavy machinery powering up in the quiet of dawn, you know the sound settles in your bones. The gravel shook under my feet as I walked toward the creek. 2 excavators stood poised over the dam like executioners. Men stared at their boots, clearly uneasy. And there, clipboard raised, voice rehearsed to sound authoritative, stood Miranda Caldwell. Emergency order, she announced when she saw me. Independent inspection found imminent failure. We can't allow your negligence to endanger our community. I took the paper from her hand. My eyes scanned details automatically, date stamps, permit numbers, authorization sequences. The inspection she referenced was dated 3 weeks earlier. The permit was for a drainage project miles away. Fraud. Plain and simple. Behind me, early wedding guests began arriving. They stepped out of cars and froze, seeing the excavators, the mud, the dam that had stood longer than all of us, and the woman casually destroying it on the most important day of my family's life. Folks, I said, raising the fraudulent order, you may want to record this. The president of your community association is about to destroy private property using illegal paperwork on my daughter's wedding day. Phones came out. Cameras clicked. Among the crowd stood Judge Raymond Keaton, a retired federal judge, and Father Jonah Avery, the priest meant to lead Emma's ceremony. They watched with sober horror as the excavator's claw pierced the first block of limestone. The sound, it cut deeper than any battlefield noise I'd ever heard. Controlled water burst free into chaos, ripping through soil, chewing at the banks, rushing toward the manicured playgrounds and pristine walking trails Brookside Haven boasted in its brochures. The wedding moved to the church basement. Emma's dress stained with creek mud, her smile brave but trembling. Guests offered hugs, casseroles, curses, and prayers. By nightfall, local news had the footage. By morning, Brookside Haven's trails were flooded, their pond overflowed, and their greenbelts resembled the aftermath of a storm they had engineered themselves. But fate, or perhaps the creek, wasn't finished. As the flood receded, water-damaged papers appeared across my property, plastered to fences and tangled in branches. I gathered each sheet, laid them out across my kitchen table to dry, and watched as the truth surfaced like debris after a storm. Financial reports revealing nearly $900,000 in association debt. Payments to Caldwell Property Solutions, a shell company owned by Miranda. Invoices for landscaping and maintenance that never happened. Transfers to offshore accounts. And, worst of all, email exchanges with an insurance adjuster discussing how catastrophic upstream failure could trigger payouts big enough to cover the association's budget deficiencies. My dam wasn't a threat. It was a scapegoat. Lauren and I brought everything to Agent Rowan Pierce of the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. He studied the documents, nodded quietly, and said words I'll never forget. We have enough to bury her, but if we wait, we'll catch her in the act. So we waited. Our kitchen became a war room. Harold tracked meetings. Marjorie gathered residents with questionable assessments. Former board member Ethan Ward provided internal emails he'd saved when he resigned in disgust. Under pressure she didn't understand, Miranda began acting like a guilty woman racing an invisible clock. She installed cameras, filed more anonymous complaints, and, most damning, attempted to break into my house at 2 a.m., caught entirely on my trail cameras. Agent Pierce smiled when he saw the footage. "That's desperation," he said. "And desperation leaves fingerprints." Her final mistake came gift-wrapped. She hired a private investigator named Cole Maddox to dig up dirt on me. Cole Maddox was Agent Pierce in disguise. She literally paid the federal government to investigate her. Then she offered me $500,000 in a manila envelope at a downtown cafe, whispering, "Let's make this unfortunate situation disappear." I wore a wire, just like Agent Pierce instructed. She walked straight into a felony with a designer handbag and a confident smile. The stage was set for her final act. Miranda scheduled a community safety forum at the Brookside Haven Community Center, flooding the neighborhood with flyers about extremists and domestic threats. She painted me as the leader of a radical group, claimed the creek was unstable, insisted she had saved the community by acting decisively. The hall filled with residents, some confused, some furious, some frightened. Water stains still climbed the walls, silent reminders of her crime. Miranda arrived in a rented luxury car, flanked by a private security team. She stood on stage, voice smooth, posture regal, unveiling slides of stock images, made-up threats, twisted narratives. And then, in her zeal, she confessed. "I personally ordered the removal of that dangerous dam structure," she declared, "because as president of this association, I have full authority over anything affecting community safety." Silence swept the room. That was when I stood. "Thank you for admitting that on camera," I said. "Now let's talk about the $900,000 missing from the association's account, the shell companies you own, the offshore transfers, and the $500,000 you offered me to destroy evidence." She screamed for security. Security did not move, because Agent Rowan Pierce was already stepping forward, badge raised. "Miranda Caldwell," he said, "you are under arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, insurance fraud, money laundering, embezzlement, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy." The applause that followed wasn't celebratory. It was the sound of people finally released from fear. She pled guilty. 5 years in federal prison. Complete forfeiture of assets. Over $2 million recovered. We rebuilt the dam, stronger, smarter, carrying parts of the original stone. Emma moved into the farmhouse that spring. Kids now fish where my great-grandfather once knelt to cool his hands in the creek. Brookside Haven replaced its HOA with a resident council based on transparency, trust, and potluck dinners instead of secret meetings. Sometimes I stand at the new spillway, listening to the water glide over the stone, and I think about how close we came to losing everything. Not just a structure, but a legacy. And every time, I ask myself the same question I'll ask you now. When someone abuses power in the name of community, at what point does staying silent become the very thing that lets them win?